This episode is brought to you by Google Health. Stop chasing someone else's definition of health. What matters is what's healthy for you. Google Health offers a new kind of coach built with Gemini for effortless tracking, sleep insights, and holistic coaching tailored to you. Visit googlestore.com to learn more and start a new relationship with your health. Requires Google account, Google Health app, internet, and Google Health premium subscription. Features subject to change. Availability and results vary. Not intended for medical purposes. Works independently of Gemini apps. Check responses for accuracy.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we are going to talk about laziness, and this is something I hear about in couples therapy all the time, is one person thinks the other one is lazy, or an individual when they're talking about their partner or their children, and why do some people seem so triggered by perceived laziness, and we will dive into that as soon as I tell you to subscribe. Most recent subscriber episode was on borderline personality disorder, and I have 225 others. You get a lot more episodes, 25% more if you subscribe, so hopefully you will. We also do have a male therapist and coach that joined Best Life Behavioral Health, so if you're more comfortable talking to a guy, you should reach out to us. As always, my contact information, Samantha@drpsychmom.com. Okay, so a lot of people think that their partner is lazy, and what does that mean? Well, obviously, like anything, it's subjective, but there's a limit to subjective. Sometimes there's objective. So generally, people are considered, quote, lazy if mostly they do not do productive things, and they are mostly kind of just pleasure-based, sitting around and maybe absorbing, whether it's media or they're scrolling or whatever. They do not enjoy hard work, truly. And that is not pejorative, honestly. Like, lazy certainly is a pejorative. But there's a whole normal distribution of everything. And some people like to work more than other people do. And it's obvious. And some people like to work too much, and they're workaholics. And some people don't like to work at all, and those people are usually considered by others to be somewhat lazy. They avoid any sort of demand placed on them. It's not necessarily pathological demand avoidance, where you just become kind of angry whenever anybody asks you to do anything. They just don't like to do things. They just like to mostly exist. And that could be fine. The problem is when two people get together who are like that. Well, okay, when two people get together who are like that before they have kids, that's fine. After they have kids, though, somebody's actually got to do the stuff. So, otherwise the kids don't have food, they don't have clothes, they don't have their bag put together for school, they don't have anything. So in a lot of those situations, one of them has to step up and do more stuff than their natural predilection would be, which is basically not to do much stuff. And then they become resentful at the other one who does not necessarily feel like they have to step up. The second time that this doesn't work is when one person is really, really productive, and they are, in fact, even compulsively productive and a workaholic type of person, super productive, and they just cannot get over that their partner just doesn't like to do productive things. They just don't like to. And you say, but wouldn't this be caught in the early stages? Well, yeah, if life was perfect, we catch everything early. Great. But that isn't how life works. In the honeymoon stage, you are flooded with dopamine and adrenaline, and you just want to have sex and hang out and cuddle and talk. And honestly, people get an energy burst. So the lazy person gets an energy burst in the honeymoon stage, and the more productive person gets a relaxation burst because they are doing only relaxing things, almost having sex, laying around, watching TV. Yeah, they go do fun stuff like concerts and parties and what have you. But most of courtship is just hanging out. Yeah, you go to dinner, but you just hang out and talk, And so there's not a lot of putting together a piece of furniture. That stuff starts once you start living together, and that's when the problems usually start. Now, why are people different on this variable? Well, usually, there are a million reasons. Most of them are either it's undiagnosed ADHD, which does make people look lazy. It does make them look like they just sit around, and not hyperactive ADHD, but inattentive ADHD. They could just kind of sit around, get lost in scrolling or in TV for hours. Or depression. Depression can make people look lazy. But as I said in the episode description, I'm not just talking about that. There is a personality level variable of how much energy you have and how much productivity you want. And usually, like most things, this is genetic. It comes from how you grew up and how your parents are. There's people who could sit for hours and just hang out. All the time, every weekend. They just hang out. Maybe a friend comes over or a neighbor or family, and they just hang out. And for people that aren't wired like that, that is like a fate worse than death. Just doing nothing, getting nothing done, and just kind of hanging out, randomly deciding when to eat or when to leave or whatever. And that just seems very just like a black hole that all of your potential productivity for the day would disappear into. And so when people are wired very differently on this, it kind of feels bad for them to say it. So in couples therapy, they'll be like, oh, he's selfish. It's like, is he really selfish? Somehow that seems better to say maybe than lazy, because lazy just seems like so, like, what could you do about that? Whereas I guess if you're selfish, you could change being selfish, right? So then that's why they say selfish. But it's really not somebody who's selfish, because a person may be hanging out with other people. They may be a really loving father or husband, or of course, if it's a woman, wife, mother, but they just do not want to do a lot of stuff. As with anything, you need to have acceptance on this variable. You are never going to make somebody who you consider lazy into somebody who is not. I swear, you won't. You will waste so much time and money in couples therapy and thought and just misery about trying to take somebody's natural energy level and changing it. You cannot do that. You have to immediately begin to think, if this person stayed this way forever, could I be happy with them? And if this is the worst thing about them, could I be happy with them? Most cases is yes, you could. You would just stop always dragging them around to do shit, because they don't want to. They don't want to do stuff. And there's like a lot of positivity of not being compulsively driven to do shit all the time. And the people, by the way, who are the productive people, they were raised in a culture and a home, and genetically they have more energy. That's a thing. But they were also wired to always want to do stuff, get stuff done. This is a lot like my producers and consumers podcast, And so they can think, you know what, it's good that somebody is willing to hang out on the porch, on the couch, whatever, with the children and be that kind of presence. They don't always have to be getting shit done. Now remember, unfortunately, the person who is more lazy is not going to engage in self-development, because that's hard. So that becomes another thing. Well, if they went to therapy and they figured out, for example, what they want to do with their life, because, they're just in this dead-end job. I hear this type of stuff so much. You know what they're going to do? They're going to never go to therapy, and they're going to stay in their dead-end job, like most people do in this world. They will stay in a comfortable job where they like the people around them. If you are upset that your wife is a stay-at-home mom and you think she does nothing all day, you will never be able to make her do anything else. You could go to therapy, you could have different conversations, you could get closer to each other, you could hang out more, as long as you're not asking her to do a lot of really difficult shit to do on your dates and making it some kind of bachelor level bungee jumping thing, and you could be more intimate and what have you. But what couples therapy is never going to do is wire your partner to have more energy and more drive. That is not, and you know what? Individual therapy probably won't do that either. Now, if they have untreated ADHD or depression, then maybe it will. Then maybe that's the problem. But you got to think about it. Are they happy when they're just sitting around? Because then that's a personality trait. Are they always like, oh, fuck, the whole day got away from me and I had all these goals and I couldn't do it and I just couldn't get off the couch. I was so exhausted. Then that's probably something else. That's probably depression, ADHD, something else. But if they are happy, and when you visit your in-laws, right, do they just sit around? because that's why your spouse just sits around. And if there's a lot of sitting when they grew up, and if you talk about all the extracurriculars you did, and you were in the school play, and you this and you that, and they basically did nothing, well, that's why they do nothing now. I mean, because they do nothing. That is what they do, nothing. And they enjoy it, and the kids might like that, and they have friends who also just kind of hang out and chill, and everybody's chilling all the time. And that you can reconceptualize as just the way that they are. Because I hate when people waste time and money, and it is a waste of time and money to sit in couples therapy or individual therapy and talk about how useless or lazy or unproductive your spouse is, because that's their personality. And if you find it that aversive, then leave. But I never seen anybody leave just over that, truly. So that's the good news. The good news is you get into couples therapy, this is not something you should waste your sessions on, is why doesn't he do anything? Because he doesn't do anything, because he never did anything. Women come in and they're like, oh my God, he's so lazy, he doesn't clean up around the house. And I'm like, what was his apartment like when you met him? They're like, oh my God, it was such a shit show. Oh my God, it was like a homeless person lived there. Oh my God, there was rodents. And I'm like, oh, your dumbass married him, right? I mean, I don't say it like that, truly, but that's the implication. And everybody's always like, yeah, you're right. You're right, I did. And I really thought he would change after marriage. And I guess I was really stupid. But yet, there is no woman I've seen that has left a man purely because he is lazy, quote unquote, or because he doesn't do enough stuff. There is always an emotional factor. And that is what the couples therapy can help you with. So if your husband is lazy and then he's like, well, this is the way to be, and at least I'm not a driven, compulsive work-a-maniac like you, well, then y'all have relationship problems because you're calling him lazy. He's calling you a crazy person. And then that's the stuff that you can fix with empathy, perspective taking, and increased understanding. And goes so much beyond this lazy idea. Your partner has a certain personality. Something that I do with my couples clients is I give them personality tests, just a little one on the internet. And we see how different they are on the variables. That's not going to change. Your extroversion level doesn't change because you're in therapy. I could assign you to go hang out with people, but if you're not an extrovert, you're going to hate it. So if there's social anxiety and I assign you to hang out with people, then that's exposure therapy. And maybe you are a socially anxious extrovert. And when you get rid of the social anxiety, your extroversion can really, really come out and steal the show. But if you are just wired to be an introvert or an extrovert, that's just going to kind of be how you are forever. And you can be more flexible or more understanding, and you could try sometimes to do other things, but it is who you are. And so much of couples work is people just deeply understanding, finally, that their partner just is who they are. They just are a person. They have positives and negatives. And the best is for two people who are not wired the same to learn how to love and understand one another with grace and kindness versus trying to change each other all the time. And this is the same thing for parenting. Trying to change your kid's personality does nothing. That's their personality. So their energy level is their energy level. Their personality is their personality. Their IQ is their IQ. And you see this more and more as the kids get older, that they really just are who they are. And then you trace it back. You're like, well, I guess they've always been that way. And then you start looking at the baby pictures, the baby videos, and you're like, my God, that baby had ADHD. Like shit. Like the same kid that sits on the couch, for like 2 hours. And I'm like, gee, why don't you get up? It was a baby who just stayed on the playmat, like a sweet little potato. And that's going to be how they are forever. Anyway, point is, acceptance helps with this. And if you struggle a lot with acceptance, it is likely that you were not accepted growing up in your family. So you don't know how to give acceptance to your spouse because you never received any growing up. And that is something that you can work on and that you can tackle as long as you know that that's a you issue instead of continuing to kind of complain about your spouse. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a great day, and I'll talk to everybody later.